How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and this is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. In today's video, I've got 3 topics to cover. The first one is that we got some updates on the PS5 Pro, including the price, which is bad, and then also the storage, which is very good. Second on the list, Sony is on something again, and they are increasing the price of the PlayStation 5, and I think it could happen in other countries, like ours. And third and finally, we're going to talk about how Sony just unlocked your DualSense Edge. I'm very excited about this topic. Let's jump into the first one, which is this new update surrounding the PS5 Pro. We talked about in the last video how whatever this showcase is going to be at the end of September may or may not be a state of play, but regardless, Sony is going to announce the PS5 Pro this year, and it'll be available probably at the end of November. Now, as far as the price goes, I've been predicting for a little while now that there's no way they're going to do the right thing and make this thing $500, because in reality, what we want them to do is drop the price of the current PS5 down to like $350 and $450 for the disc model and digital model, not respectively, flip that. So it's $350 for the digital model, $450 for the disc model, and then charge $100 more for the PS5 Pro, settle at $550 and call it a day. I mean, people will show up in droves if they're under $600. But what we're hearing from Jeff Grubb over on his morning news show is that not only are they going to miss this $500 target, they may even miss the $600 target. So what he initially teased is that right now it's kind of hovering around $600 as the price that they want to sell it for, but $700 is entirely not out of the question, which is absolutely insane. Like me, a YouTuber who really wants to make a video about this when it comes out, I'd honestly much prefer that it costs $600 because I'm paying for this thing out of my own pocket and I'm going to buy it anyway. But for people who haven't gotten a PlayStation 5, have been kind of sitting on the fence waiting for the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Pro before they decide to pull the trigger, I think all a $700 price tag is going to do is convince them to not buy that and then just go down lower to the disc enabled PlayStation 5. So hopefully there's a little bit of a price cut, but what we've heard from Sony in the beginning of this generation is that because component prices are so absolutely out of control, they're really kind of hamstrung and are refusing to drop the price of the PlayStation 5. It's not something we haven't seen before, obviously, because when the PS5 Slim came out, they have started doing some sales on places like Best Buy and Amazon. The digital model of the PS5 Slim has dropped down to $400, which is crazy because that's the original MSRP of the digital model. But when the Slim came out, they increased the prices of the thing, which is nuts because when you see a Slim model, you usually expect a price decrease across the board, but dropping the disc model by $50 brings it to $450, which makes it a really good deal. But yeah, I think they need an overall price decrease on the PlayStation 5 because the sales are dropping, right? Like you can say that a big reason for that is because the lack of games from the first party, but there have been some really good games that came out this year like Stellar Blade and now Black Myth Wukong and NCAA 25, and all of those kind of move the needle a little bit on selling consoles. But I think the biggest reason people aren't really showing up is A, the thing is too expensive for them right now. Like they didn't buy it for $500 when it came out, so they're probably not going to buy it for $500 now. And B, they're waiting for the PS5 Pro, which, you know, they're probably expecting to be around $600 at the max. So if it hits $700, that's going to be kind of crazy. And if these rumors about the showcase not being a showcase and being a state of play are true, and we don't get a bunch of announced first party games from this thing, that's going to be absolutely insane for trying to convince people to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro. Like Sony's task right now is to 100% convince people who don't feel like there are enough first party games to really buy a PlayStation 5 Pro that they are going to have first party games to play on this thing and make it worth the purchase of up to $700. If I didn't have a YouTube channel where I was already going to buy the PS5 Pro to begin with to make a video about it, I think the real clincher for me would be seeing how games ran on it. So in the PS4 generation, when they did the PS4 Pro, that felt like a necessary upgrade for me because I had been on PC for a long time, so I had gotten used to 60 FPS. And at that point, the PS4 was so long in the tooth because they held it back so long before releasing it that it wasn't even running games at a rock solid 30 FPS at like 720p. So I needed something that could get me a better resolution with a consistent performance. I wasn't even expecting 60 FPS. But now in this generation, with so many cross-gen ports of PS4 games that run at a locked 60 FPS on that console, I'm seeing that kind of go away with the true next-gen games like Monster Hunter Wilds, Lords of the Fallen, X, Y, and Z, and I want that experience to carry forward. So if Sony can come out with an announcement that says, hey, we've got the PS5 Pro ready, here's a bunch of first-party games we have lined up that are all going going to run at 60 FPS on it, that's going to get me excited to spend $700 on it versus feeling like it's something I have to do to just keep up with the latest PlayStation tech. You know, there is, in my mind, a clear delineation point between being excited to spend $700 and feeling like I have to spend $700, and I hope it is on the right side of the fence where I am excited to spend $700 because that is a lot of money. But it's not all doom and gloom when it comes to new news about the PlayStation 5 Pro, because my boy, my favorite channel out there, Moore's Law is Dead, he did yet another report on the PS5 Pro. He not only had a lot of good things to say about its performance, which is great because that kind of backs up what I was just saying, but he said that the dev kits that have been sent out for it are all equipped with 2TB SSDs. So if they can come out of the fence swinging with the 2TB SSD on board with this thing, and of course it has that external SSD slot where you can plug your own SSD in, that's going to get me even more excited to pick it up, because there is nothing worse than being on a launch PS5 and realizing that you only have enough space out of the box with that thing to fit like Call of Duty and maybe 2 other games. Like Call of Duty just takes up so much damn space, and it sucks that I like playing it so much because I'd love to reclaim that space. I mean, I even have an extra 1TB SSD in the console upstairs. I've got a 2TB one in the console down here, and both of those things are consistently almost full because I'm recording footage all the time. So yeah, having 2TB out the gate, I'd argue it's still not enough, but it's closer to fair than I think Sony is right now, only putting a 1TB SSD inside the PS5. Like at least on the Slim, you get a full usable 1TB, but it's still not really enough. So if this thing comes out and it's black, that would be cool. But also if it has 2TB on board, that pushes me more with my little needle scale towards being excited to buy it, because the less I have to worry about storage, the better. On my gaming PC, the main onboard SSD that it shipped with is 2TB, so that was pretty cool. I was able to get a 4TB SSD for doing a sponsorship over on PSReady, so having 6TB in that thing, that's about the level that I'm very excited with, because it's never full. Like I download games all the time, I forget about games that I'm not even playing anymore, and there have been a couple of times where I've had to delete stuff that I'm not playing, but the amount of times I've had to do that on that PC is nothing compared to how much I have to delete stuff on my PlayStation 5. And being a physical gamer like I am on the PlayStation 5 doesn't even help, because it installs the entire game from the disc anyway. So at least with the disc, you just have to wait for the game to copy. But I also have gigabit internet, so when the Wi-Fi chip in that PS5 is working correctly, which is like 50-50 at this point, it downloads games a lot faster than it installs them from the disc. But still, having 2TB on board, that sounds pretty cool. I'm just gonna repeat what I've been saying for the past month or so. Sony just needs to announce this thing. Like, too much info is out there. I mean, I know that the hardcore people who really care are a small minority of the entire PlayStation user base, but it's getting to a point where there have been so many sources talking about it, whether it's Moore's Law is Dead, Digital Foundry, various leakers on YouTube and Twitter like Jeff Grubb and everyone like that, that it's pretty much an open secret. Like we heard from developers at Gamescom that they were seeing games played on the PlayStation 5 Pro. So Sony, just wake up and announce it already. Like give us some stuff to talk about that's from you and not from leakers. I get that the strategy Sony's taken on over the past generation or so is to just be silent to try and curb leaks and stuff from getting out there, but it's clearly not working. Like you've got some leaks in your ship. People are talking anyway, so you may as well just get ahead of it and start announcing stuff a little bit earlier than a month before it comes out. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that brings us to the second news story here, which is that Japan, I'm sorry, but the PS5 now costs more for you guys, and it is not really a small increase. And the worst part is this isn't just the PS5 for them, it's also the PSVR 2 and the DualSense controller. So right now I have the conversions of how much more the increase is in US dollars. So the PlayStation 5 for them is going up to an equivalent of $91. That's a $100 increase, which is absolutely nuts. The digital edition also got a $91 increase. So for us, that would be crazy. It'd be like paying $450 or so for the digital edition and $591 for the disc edition. That's crazy. $600, the price of a PS5 Pro for an original PlayStation 5, right on the cusp of the Pro being announced. That's nuts. That's absolutely crazy. So what's causing this, right? Before I talk about the price increase on the DualSense and the PSVR 2, basically what's happening is people in China really want to play Black Myth Wukong, and the Japanese yen is down. So that's kind of creating a perfect storm where people in China are buying scalped PS5s from Japan overseas and having them shipped over to China. So Sony's kind of like capitalizing on that by increasing the price of the PlayStation 5 because they don't make money from scalpers, right? Like they only make money from the scalper buying the console. So they want to make sure that they're making more money up front by charging more for the console itself. And when the yen is worth less, of course, they want to make as much money in Japan as they do here in America or over in Europe. So they're going to raise the price to kind of compensate for that. So it's two folds of an issue where they need to increase the price to continue making a profit on the PlayStation 5. The DualSense only got a $14 increase. That one doesn't really bug me as much because the DualSense is already pretty fairly priced. They've done a good job the past few generations of making sure that a controller basically only costs the same as a new game. So it's not necessarily the biggest expense. And I've never needed to buy a new controller. I'm still rocking the white controller that came with my original PS5. I don't abuse my controllers, so they never get stick drift, so they're fine. But charging $100 more for the PSVR 2, man, that is dumb, right? Like we just talked about how the big price cut it got down to $350 made that thing sell out completely on Amazon and at Best Buy. It really showed where that thing should have been priced to begin with. So charging more for something that people aren't even buying to begin with, like that just doesn't make any sense. They should be lowering the price as much as possible to kind of recoup the money that they're losing by selling games on it. Because if you buy a PSVR 2 headset, logic says that you're going to at least pick up a couple of games for it, especially if you're just using it with your PlayStation 5 and you're not going to pick up the PC adapter, which, side note there, I've been trying to pick this thing up since it launched and it's just sold out all the time. Like I actually want to try to use the PSVR 2 with my PC, but I can never get this $60 adapter. So they're not even making the amount that I would be able to buy one with, which sucks. And that kind of throws into question the whole PS5 Pro situation. Like if that thing's going to cost $600, they're going to need to keep the price of the original PS5 low. And that kind of makes me believe the rumor that it could be $700 because they're going to need to have a gap in price to kind of make money on that thing, especially if the parts in it are that much more stronger than what we currently have in the original PlayStation 5. Again, it just shows that Sony just needs to announce this thing and answer some questions, because when you give people room to speculate, they're just going to speculate, right? Like we don't know anything officially from Sony about this console, and I think it's about time that they kind of come out and just say, like, this is what these things are going to cost going forward, take it or leave it, because this nebulous situation where it's increasing in price in some places and not increasing in others, we don't know the price of the new console that's coming out, it's not good for the brand overall, at least in my opinion. Anyway, that brings us to the third news story, which is that Sony is finally giving us the ability to unlock our DualSense Edge. So one of the biggest reasons, you guys know this, that I was excited to pick up the DualSense Edge was not only because of the cool profile switching and everything like that on PlayStation 5, but it was going to be a replacement for my main PC controller, which was the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller, which fuck, man, that, I just gotta be real, that is like the worst value I have ever experienced buying a controller. I bought the Elite Series 2 or whatever it's called when it came out to make it my main PC controller, mainly because Xbox sells this little $8 adapter that makes your PC connect to the controller instead of using Bluetooth, and it's just so much better because using a Bluetooth controller is the worst. It has latency, it disconnects all the time, it just basically forces you to use the thing wired, which I don't like. So when the DualSense Edge came out, I was excited to maybe use it wirelessly with PC, get those profile switching and everything, but Sony didn't have that ready. Well, they've updated the accessories for PlayStation app for PC, so you can now take advantage of all of those different features that you do get over on the PlayStation 5 with your DualSense Edge, and I think that's great. I also like that they didn't announce it well before it comes out, like they announced it the second they put it available. I downloaded it, I tried it out, it seems like everything works just fine. I really think they need to steal that idea from Xbox though, and make the PlayStation Link adapter work with the DualSense Edge. Like it's sitting right there. Just make it work, right? Like having the ability to directly connect the controller to your PC to use it wirelessly and still take advantage of the DualSense features, that should be a bare minimum feature of this thing. Because if you didn't know, if you connect over Bluetooth with the DualSense Edge, you have to use Steam input to trick your PC into thinking it's an Xbox controller, because for some reason, all the PlayStation games that have DualSense support, they don't work with Bluetooth, and that's not with just with the DualSense Edge, that's with the regular DualSense as well. Like I like that Sony is kind of catching up with these PC features, but it just shows that they kind of launched into this without any real plan, and seeing this combined with the whole PlayStation Network ID thing, that situation that happened with Helldivers 2, all of these problems that they have could have been fixed if they had just held out a little bit longer and or put this stuff into development before the controllers and the game's launched instead of doing it well after the fact or starting to work on it the minute the game's launch. You know, like all of these problems are unforced errors, like completely on Sony's part. And I hope they kind of learn from these mistakes and sort of work to address them in the future. But yeah, I tried the app out. I think it works great. If you are one of these people like me who likes using the DualSense Edge with your PC to charge it for when you want to use it on your PlayStation 5, you should definitely download the app, update your firmware, get everything ready to go, and mess around with these controller profiles and everything like that over on your PC. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.